Poisonrana.
Hello. Davie Portman here from Poisonrana Live. It is Sunday. It is 2 p.m. and we have a whole lot of wrestling to talk about. But first of all, happy Father's Day to all the fathers out there, or the stepfathers, or the dads, the people that stepped up to be fathers, or the mothers who are fathers, or the daddies. And I've got a daddy with me today in our man, Neal. Hello, Neal. How are you doing?
I think I might be a zaddy. I'm not quite sure what that is, Davie, but it's a word I've seen on the internet once or twice.
Okay, I've got an Urban Dictionary that right away. Zaddy is a slang term that has gained popularity as a way to describe an attractive, stylish, and confident man, often older, with a certain level of swagger and charm, aka a Neal. So yes, we have got a zaddy here today. Hello, Neal. How's it going?
I was just going for the older bit of all of that description. It's far too complimentary. I'm doing really well, thanks. I believe both of us, our fathers, are not in the immediate environment. Mine's abroad. Yours is back in the UK. So
yeah, mine is currently at Dracula's castle. I just checked in with him, and he's in Romania somewhere. So he's having a great time, I'm sure. So yeah. So Mother's Day, Father's Day, I'm usually around. But Braden, yes, celebrating with his dad. But Neal's going to step in today to talk about a whole lot of wrestling. We've got a lot of WWE to talk about, some AEW Summer Blockbuster, and I think at the end of the show, Neal's going to fill me in with some Dominion, which I haven't seen yet, and I probably won't see. But I'll get your thoughts on that at the end of the show.
And spoiler, I'm not sure I'd recommend it beyond the main event. There's an awful lot of House of Torture involvement, Davie, which I know not your favorite faction.
We all love a bit of House of Torture. Yeah, but
a Neal, bit of news coming from it though. Some title changes and some names for the G1, so we can get into.
Awesome. Okay, well, looking forward to hearing that at the end. Yeah, I guess it is G1 coming up pretty soon. Mm-hmm. But yeah, let's. First of all, how are you doing? What's new? Any news? Any goss? Anything to catch me up on?
Today's been not to just today. This has been a pretty quiet week for me. I've been kind of busy in my day job, and honestly, I don't have much gossip for you. I caught up with some old friends yesterday in person for the first time in a long time, which was very cool. Because, like I alluded to earlier on, I'm the age to be a dad, but I'm not one. So all my friends are, for the most part.
Right.
And when that happens, you tend to see your pals a little less because they've got dad duty as well as work duty and all the rest of it. So it's always nice to catch up with old pals. So that's about it. Really nothing strange or startling to tell you about. Last time we did this together, you weren't long back from your vacation. Mm-hmm. And your vacation illness, I think. So I don't know, anything on that level for you?
No, I've been pretty good since then. I did have a checkup this week, and everything's looking good. I'm still drinking my my kombucha. I'm having quite a bit of fermented food for the gut health. So
nice.
You know, sauerkraut. What's it? Kefir.
Kefir.
Yeah, that's pretty good. The kombucha, some olives. Yeah, so looking after myself in that way, but excited for a few trips coming up. All in Texas. Braden and I will be making the trip to Dallas. If you are in the Dallas area, if you are going to All In, please let us know, as we'd love to meet up. We always love meeting up with listeners, and Texas isn't a market we've been to since doing the podcast. So if you are in that area and you're going, would absolutely love to see you. So make sure you reach out. But we'll be getting into some of the build of All In a little later on the show. And similarly, All Out being announced in Toronto later in the year in September. Again, if you're thinking of coming for that, I know Braden and I and the post wrestling team have something we're maybe cooking up for that as well. So would love to see you there as well. Do you have any plans with All Out at all, Neal?
I would love to recreate the joy that was the Forbidden Door weekend and to come, but it's late September, so that for me is my work is sort of, I think I might have explained this before. It's sort of almost like being a teacher or a university lecturer or something like that. We have a summer break, a summer recess, a Christmas recess, and Easter recess. Getting leave outside of those times is sometimes tricky.
Right.
But I'm looking into it. I'm making some sort of preliminary inquiries to see whether it might be a goer. I'd love to come. It's likely though that my summer trip will probably, beyond any sort of holiday abroad, will just be over to London for this year's Forbidden Door, which I imagine I'll be attending. I still haven't bought tickets, but I'd like to go if for no other reason for this. I think it'll be a great show, and maybe I can do a report or something for the.
Absolutely, yeah. The AEW pay-per-views always deliver, so I think that would be a good one to be going to, and I'm sure there'll be some other sort of supporting events from the UK Indies, Rev Pro, etc., going on around that weekend as well. Little bit of housekeeping before we get into everything. Braden and I released 2 shows this week over on our Patreon. This is our Poisonrana free feed. You can find a lot of goodies on this feed. We do Poisonrana pretty much every Sunday around this time, around 2 p.m., where we talk about everything going on in the world of wrestling. But we have some bonus shows on here as well. Braden, once a month, records with Jordan Goodman, your co-host from The Wellness Policy, to basically just talk about anything and everything. A very random show. They take your bizarre questions. They let the tangents go on tangents, and really, really fun show. If you fancy listening to that, listen to some of our Poisonrana pals chatting about stuff that isn't wrestling. We also have Wattup Doe with John Siino and B Detroit, where they catch you up once a month with everything going on in the world of pop culture, hip hop, video games. I know Siino just got the Switch 2, so I'm sure he'll be telling you all about that on their latest episode. And they give you their thoughts on the world of wrestling as well. And then our Eagles Don't Hunt Flies lads, where Bushby Brandon and Dickie go through the career of John Moxley. You can go and check back all the back catalogue of that. They go in depth into the different characters, John Moxley, Dean Ambrose. They've talked about the CCW days, the WWE days, the Shield days, and the AEW days as well as New Japan as well. So very in-depth career retrospective on John Moxley, which I know they're planning on wrapping it up this summer, and it kind of seems apt, seeing that it seems like this John Moxley storyline might be wrapping up this summer as well. That's all available for free. We also have some movie reviews and sometimes release some Patreon shows for free on this feed. We've had Best Match Evers in the past, where we talk about the best matches of certain people's careers or greatest rivalries. We have movie reviews as well on this feed. You can find our Batman reviews as well as our Halloween reviews. And then sometimes we release a little delayed some of our Patreon shows. And we will be releasing this week episode 9 of The Champ Is Here, where we were joined by Benno and Hamflet. Benno from Grapple, Michael Hamflet from What Culture, both known as Benno and Hamflet in your house, to talk about the 9th reign of John Cena. We'll be releasing this one for free. It's the big Batista feud, Hollywood Batista, the WrestleMania 26 match. But that leads us into next week, where it is so weird how sometimes we do these Patreon shows and things just seem to align. Because next week, we're going to be talking about the 10th reign of John Cena, which not only is this the pipe bomb, CM Punk, John Cena taking place, which will be taking place in just a couple of weeks once again, but it is also John Cena versus R-Truth. How weird is that? We're doing this show once a month, and it just so happens that the month we're talking about Cena defending the title against Ron Killings and CM Punk takes place the same month that John Cena in 2025 is defending the title against Ron Killings and CM Punk.
Amazing.
So
synchronicity, Davie.
There was only one man we could get on for this show, and that is our Chicago boy himself, CM Scrump himself. He'll be joining. Braden and I will be going through the entire 10th reign. And you know what? I've put together a bit of a playlist that I'm going to throw up on Facebook and on our Patreon, so you can go through it. Luckily, this show, since the network's collapse, is proving to be a little tricky now. Tricky to find certain things, but luckily, a lot of this stuff is on YouTube. So I've linked it all there. I've got the whole story in bullet points so you can follow along. So that's going to be a big show coming out next week. But we had a pretty big week as well ourselves this week, as we did 2 movie reviews. Firstly, we recorded a show as picked by our world champion patron, Justin, who picked a favorite of mine, Hot Fuzz, part 2 of the Cornetto trilogy, Simon Pegg, Nick Frost, and Edgar Wright movie, as they are fighting crime in Somerset. This was a super fun show to do. Are you a Cornetto trilogy fan?
I am, yes. Yeah. They're great films.
Yeah. Do you have a favorite of the 3?
It might be Hot Fuzz, actually.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah. What about you?
I love Shaun of the Dead. Shaun of the Dead's one of my favorite movies of all time, but Hot Fuzz is very good as well, and especially on rewatch, there's a lot of fun to be had with that film.
I think Hot Fuzz maybe created more belly laughs for me than Shaun of the Dead, possibly, but I don't know. There's not much in it. They're the 2 best of the 3.
Absolutely. And then it was a Friday the 13th just passed. I hope no one had any bad luck, but it's a little semi-tradition here at Poisonrana that when there is a Friday the 13th, we review a Friday the 13th movie. And this time it was part 4, the final chapter, starring a young Corey Feldman. These reviews are always fun. The movies maybe not so much, but we've been getting some good feedback already about that show. So if any of this sounds interesting to you, it's only $5 a month. Go to patreon.com/Poisonrana.
Very well worth it. I can attest. I've been a patron since pretty much the first week it was launched. Yeah.
Neal, have you decided yet? I know you had a few options. Have you decided what your next upYOURS is going to be?
I have not. I'm sorry, Davie.
Okay, we'll get there. You're in the you're in the queue.
I'm in the doghouse. Yeah.
As soon as you know. No.
I'm not normally so indecisive, but I kind of don't want to put you through something I think you won't enjoy, which would be the Star Trek option. So it'll particularly Braden. So maybe the Royal Tenenbaums.
Okay,
that seems like
that's
what I'm leaning towards.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, I think that's enough housekeeping for now. Let's get into some wrestling. Starting off, big, I'd say controversial week in WWE with the announcement of John Cena versus CM Punk taking place one more time in Saudi Arabia. Now, Braden and I talked a bit about this on Tuesday's show with this announcement coming on Monday Night Raw. But we had a bit more come out of this on SmackDown, where John Cena and CM Punk went face-to-face, and Cena outright called Punk a hypocrite. He's kind of laying out his master plan since his return and saying that all of these things, like he knew Punk and Seth were going to go at it at the Elimination Chamber, and that would cause him to be distracted. He knew Randy in his hometown would work against him. He knew all this stuff. But yes, calling out CM Punk a hypocrite. Now, if you know everything that's going on and everything that's been said in the past, you don't really need to read too much between the lines here in what he's getting at. CM Punk in the past has been very vocal about working Saudi Arabia and kind of criticizing others, the Miz in particular, of working these events. And now he's going to be collecting that paycheck and going over to Saudi. Where are you with all this? Like, what are your thoughts on Phil Brooks as a person for taking this match? And how has the handling on TV been for this build?
It's been interesting, hasn't it? Because they're leaning into, not without hammering you over the head with the actual tweets from the past or anything like that. I don't think they would pass muster on television anyway, because criticism is a very mild term for some of the things that Phil Brooks said to the Miz. But I think it's interesting that they're using this, because it's very difficult to come away from this without thinking, yeah, Cena, the heel, is right. Punk is a hypocrite. He criticized in the strongest terms people working Saudi Arabia, and on Monday show on Raw, pretty good promo segment, between the two, ending in Cena saying, if you want this title shot, it'll have to be at Night of Champions. And Punk just immediately says yes. And this is clarified for us by the guys at the desk. Punk says, wherever. And then Fridays was even more interesting, because Punk felt like he was really winding up for a blistering promo, and then felt like he just completely lost his way at one point, and didn't say anything that really countered criticism. No. Other than he would go to Mars, he'd go anywhere,
go to hell, go to Mars. Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. So on the Phil Brooks side of your question, yeah, he is a hypocrite.
Yeah.
Of course he is, because, he described this as, and I know it's early for some people, but they don't maybe want to hear this, but he said of doing these shows to the Miz, go suck a blood money covered dick. Isn't that right? I don't have the exact quote. In Saudi Arabia, you fucking dork. So hard to take that any other way than he was sort of anti this company doing these shows.
It's like it's strange, because I wonder, like, we're all waiting for the CM Punk blow up. We've seen it happen. It's been a nice ride so far in WWE, but like it kind of this, and the character of Cena is a heel, and it's him goading him. If you want this match, you've got to go to the one place you said you haven't. But Punk's character really hasn't addressed it, apart from, I really want the title. I wonder even if it would have made more sense to leave Monday's promo with Punk not accepting it. Cena putting the challenge out there and Punk having to go and think about it, and giving a bit of time before this Friday promo to like, okay, how can we address this without Punk seeming like a hypocrite? I don't know if there is a way, to be honest, but as you said, it was the immediate acceptance of the match is just a little like, okay, come on. That's a little strange there.
He was like, you got it.
Do you, I've seen some people being like, card subject to change. Do you see any angle? Do you see Seth and his group maybe taking out Punk like prior to this match, prior to that flight to Saudi Arabia, and things changing? Or is this actually going ahead at Night of Champions?
I think it's going ahead. That's my suspicion. I understand that there are people out there who feel that that's a possibility, but I don't think they'd go this far with the acceptance of the match. I think they would have, perhaps, like you said, Davie, a little more hesitancy from Punk about whether to do it, and then finally to decide that it's worth it or something like that. I think this is the company trying to nod to the reality that all wrestling fans of a certain level, at least, know about, without really going there too hard, and it's a really difficult tightrope to walk across, because, like I said before, how do you come away from this without sort of a hypocritical view of what Phil Brooks at least is doing?
I just find it a baffling decision. You know, there's first of all, I thought this match would come way later in the Cena run. Yep. Part of me even saw this being his final match. You know, Punk and Cena one last time. Punk going for the title, whatever. I thought it would be way later, or maybe SummerSlam. You've got so many. It's not like they were forced to do this option. Like, there's other characters you could have, whether it's, you know, Jey Uso has just been involved with Cena. He's in this King of the Ring tournament. You could just do Jey and Cena at Night of Champions. And it's damaging on so many different levels, because it makes people who do know what's going on, like you and I, be like, hey, I like Punk, but he's a hypocrite for this. And it's, you know, it's proving things in those Hangman Page promos and things Jack Perry said and things. It's proving his doubters, like, completely correct. Like, he is a hypocrite for doing this. But on the other hand as well, like, you are, like, if you are, like, a fan in Saudi Arabia, or you are these princes paying a whole lot of money, and you're watching TV and it's kind of being painted as Saudi is the place that no one wants to go to. Like, if I was a Saudi fan, I'd kind of be like, yo, what's up? Like, do you know what I mean? So
I was going to bring that up too.
Corner that it feels completely unnecessary to do.
It's kind of weird, because they don't want to go too far. I mean, I was suggesting there, for example, that, you know, Punk has more of a crisis of conscience. I don't think they want to go there for that very reason that you're talking about. They don't want Saudi equals bad to be the narrative of this company that gets so much revenue from the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia and its you know, its royal family and the sports authority and all of that. So I think it's sort of strange that they've gone there at all, and gone there as in the storyline. But I suppose they felt they had to kind of address it in some way, because Royal Rumble, for example, next year is going to be in Saudi Arabia. And how do you do that show? A show of that level, sort of second only to Mania, really. Arguably, some would say SummerSlam, without CM Punk.
I think you can. I think you've got a huge roster. Like, if Punk didn't want to do these shows, I don't think he's being forced to. You know, you have Chamber. Even if you want Punk in the main event of one of your Mania title matches, you can have someone take him out prior to the Rumble, so he's not in that, and then inserts himself into the Chamber. I think it's scripted entertainment. You can write your way out of anything you want to. So at the end of the day, it is Phil Brooks going back on his word, and I think it's the fact he was so vocal about it. Like, remember, Cena decided not to work some of these shows for a while, and he's not getting this same criticism. It's how outspoken Punk has been about it and I think it paints him in a pretty bad light.
Even someone lower down the card, like Kevin Owens, who's still a pretty big name, but we've never really heard the exact story of all of this, but Sammy we were told wasn't welcome on the Saudi shows and was conspicuous by his absence. And he feels like somebody who has kind of embraced going there, because he's done film packages about doing pilgrimages while he's there, you know, in Arabian dress and so on. And so while Sammy was persona non grata in Saudi for whatever reason, I think it was to do with his support for his.
I believe I can't. Yeah, I think Saudi and there were political tensions between the two nations, if I remember correctly, and that kind of has eased over time. And I think that's where Sammy was then welcomed, right?
That's my recollection of it. Sammy's of Syrian descent. We do know that, and his charity is Sammy for Syria to it's a non-political thing, but it's to sort of get mobile clinics going in that country. And I think you're right. Basically, there was just geopolitical tension between the two countries at that time, and maybe Sami was identified with Syria, and therefore they didn't want him there. But anyway, the larger point being that in sympathy with his best mate, Kevin Owens refused to go as long as Sami was not allowed to go.
Yeah.
And so he wasn't there either. So it goes to your point that it seems to be up to the talent. This does not seem to be a contractual obligation. And I imagine that Punk, with the pull that he had, could have got some sort of carve out contractually if he really wanted to when he was returning. So, I mean, I don't know. Jordan's in the chat and he's asking, is it possible for someone to change their beliefs or perspective over time without being stigmatized as a hypocrite? And my answer to that is absolutely yes. But I feel that goes more to what Jordan then says about not liking onions and then deciding he does. It's a change of taste. That's a change of taste or something, rather than a very stark change of principle, which at least possibly should come with an explanation. Perhaps.
I think that's the thing. We all know CM Punk is such an outspoken person, and I think that's why his character works so much, because you always kind of feel like he's shooting, right? You always feel like there's this element of truth that, yes, he's telling a wrestling story, but there's stuff Phil Brooks believes that is coming out in his CM Punk promos. And I think that's why he's so effective. And I think when the criticism is as loud as that, you are welcoming people to call you a hypocrite or whatever. And I think he's a star at a level enough where he has the freedom to, like, this SmackDown promo, it felt like he was gearing up to kind of address it, and maybe, and I think he's smart enough to address it in a way where he doesn't need to go too deep into, his political beliefs or anything like that, or just using his social media platform. We've seen people like Mustafa Ali, who's been critical of Saudi Arabia before, and he's put out just a tweet saying, "I'm working this show and I'm donating my earnings to this charity," or whatever. There's stuff you can do where, like, you're not going to be I think you can get away around it, but as you said, it's a matter of taste. I don't think this is necessarily a taste of my preference is not going, like, or my taste is I don't like onions and now I do, like, as my taste buds have changed. This is more like, it's a little deeper than that. And I think what he put on his Instagram, just a picture of Samoa Joe and Miz fighting in Saudi Arabia in a little wink, wink, nod, nod thing. And I feel a lot of fans are disappointed. And you've seen online, you've seen all the reaction to this throughout the week. And CM Punk is a very online person as well. So I don't know, maybe something will come out in an interview or something. But at this point, I think it's completely fair to label him as a hypocrite, because he's not given me any reason really to not.
A couple of people have suggested online that, we'll possibly hear through some third-party source that he donated his fee later on, like you said about Mustafa Ali, but not from the man himself. Probably, it'll probably be put out to a friendly outlet that that's
or
what
even
he did.
Like to have him on like a Ariel Helwani, Pat McAfee, like something, a show that's adjacent to WWE. They're connected, but you don't necessarily have to have it said on the on the actual programming. Yeah.
I think the other side of this, though, is if you really want to sort of get yourself in the shoes of the Saudi Arabians, is what he said. Blood money soaked dick. But they clearly want him there.
Yeah.
Sami being just of a certain ethnicity, was enough for them to sort of say, "Don't bring that guy here."
Yeah.
But what this guy said in very stark terms was not enough for. So I suppose maybe it's just a question of star power. He's arguably the biggest guy, one of certainly, in the company. They want him there. He's going.
So,
I don't know what else to say about it, but how they address this in the next week or two, I think, will be interesting.
So the elephant in the room aside, what is your interest in this match? How have you found the promos building this match so far this past week?
I'm afraid it's kind of low because I have not seen out of John Cena in this run an even what I would describe as very decent match yet. He has needed the bells and whistles. And I don't know. I guess we'll get bells and whistles in this match. But if it's to be a straight up singles match between the two, I don't have high expectations for that being a banger by any stretch. I think it's probably going to need interference and perhaps a surprise appearance from someone. What that would look like, I don't really know. But I think if it's to main event, for example, this pay-per-view or PLE, it doesn't fill me with excitement, and it probably should, because this is, like you said earlier, I was in the same boat. I sort of felt they might store up CM Punk for later in this retirement run and do so with a longer build and a bit more to it than what we're getting, because this show is just around the corner. There's only another week or so of TV to build it.
Not that WWE have had trouble really selling tickets, but
exactly,
you've got 2 nights in a stadium which isn't sold out yet. You put that on the marquee, that will move tickets over here for sure. I do think there's still sort of a little bit of magic with these two. I am finding the promos better than some of the stuff Cena's done with others. But Punk kind of addresses that. Like, I'm the most interesting part of this 4-month run you've had so far, which is, it's kind of true. But do you want to, that to me was the equivalent of Ospreay saying, you're the reason why AEW's been shit recently. Like it had that same kind of ring to it. It's like, this run hasn't been working yet, and I'm here to make it interesting. But yeah, we've really yet to see much on the wrestling side from Cena so far.
Yeah, I mean, my criticisms of the retirement run so far are kind of twofold. The storyline has been all over the place. They even tried to kind of retcon it ever so slightly this week with the kind of discussion of the final boss coming back up and he's all 4 faces on Mount Rushmore and all that. That's not really landing with me. I just don't think they've really got there with the heel character. So that's one side of it. And then the in-ring side, as Megan has pointed out in the chat, there's ref bump, low blow to strike to the head with the title belt. Really is the formula that we're getting.
Yeah.
And interference, from rappers or whatever it happens to be. Cena can't really go to the extent that he used to, and I think that's fine. No one should expect him to be able to, at this point in his career. And there's a lot of forgiveness from the fans on that. And when these main events come around, a lot of the crowd are really up for it. But as a viewer at home, I'm not buying into the excitement. I'm not enjoying these matches very much because I feel like I know what's going to come. It's either going to be a boring match or it's going to be an interesting match because of interference.
You know what? You could change up the formula a little bit here and have interference from The Miz.
Oh man, now you're talking.
It would kind of work for the story, wouldn't it? Like, do a little side quest for Punk, like in between Night of Champions, and like it doesn't have to go on for long. But Miz, it's funny, on our next episode of The Champ Is Here, John Cena and The Miz do have a brief tag title run together, so it would tie everything quite nicely with this hypocrite of CM Punk.
I'd love to see it. I wonder if the company would be ballsy enough to do it, because for those who aren't really plugged in, they'll want to know why. When they find out why, it'll be kind of, ooh, he said that,
Yeah, if you haven't been following at all, it would be really, really random, but it could be quite fun.
It would be awesome. I'm sold.
So we've also had in the past week, on last week's show, we were talking about R-Truth, his contract not being renewed with WWE. And then fast forward just a couple of hours later, he's returning and he's back as Ron Killings. Got a bit of a meaner edge. Reports are out there, predominantly from Fightful, saying that it was his kind of in his negotiation. He said, I want to use my own name so it has a bit more cachet when I eventually do leave the company. And I don't kind of want to be playing the goofball all the time. I'd like a bit of a serious edge. And I think Truth has been great this past week, both on Raw with the promo cutting his hair and the subsequent attack on Cena on SmackDown as well. I think he's been awesome. But that being said, when you heard John Cena has 1 year left, were 2 R-Truth matches on your card of the very limited amount of matches John Cena's going to be having?
Definitely not. I did think R-Truth would be used for heat, for heel. When we got heel Cena, I think everyone thought childhood hero thing, all that goofiness. He's going to beat the shit out of R-Truth at some point for heat. I don't think they even handled that well, to be frank, because that was the press conference angle, and then they kind of tried to parlay it into the show the next week. Didn't really work very well. But to get back on point, I'm really pleased for R-Truth. First of all, because in a company where the talent don't have much, they're not unionized, they're not organized in that way. There's no players association. So they don't have a lot of leverage a lot of the time. And he managed to get himself into a situation largely because of fan sentiment where he had leverage. And by all accounts, if Fightful's reporting is correct, at least, he was refusing to speak to anyone except for, Nick Khan. He wanted somebody in a high, in that TKO corporate role to make assurances to him. And no doubt that's meant more money as a semblance of some creative input into his run, which I think his son has described as one last run. So this may be only a year or a couple of years, maybe even just one, who knows. But I'm really pleased to see a talent who on screen is painted as dumb a lot of the time, being super smart about how to handle the situation, seeing that he had the crowd behind him, the company are reaching out, and he's sort of refusing calls perhaps from Paul Levesque,
good for him, having enough respect in himself to just not answer the first call asking him to come back. I mean, this is a guy who, apart from the little TNA break, it's 25 years with this company and beloved. And apparently it wasn't anyone high up who informed him his contract was being renewed, and it was done in quite a cold business-like way. And you think, okay, if you're someone who's been in NXT for a year, have got the call up, been floating around doing nothing for 6 months, sure. But this is imagine if at your work after years and years, you were just your last day, there was no gift basket, no goodbye card, thank you for working with, or anything like that. It was just you walk out and that's it. It is disrespectful. And I think Truth has played an absolute blinder here. And he's probably got himself a nice little bump in his salary. He's now got this Ron Killings character on TV at arguably the hottest he's ever been in the company. He can have a nice fun run and I think boost his salary when he eventually leaves, boost his asking price for whether it be another big company or just an indie run or whatever. I think he's done great. And it's also you hear these promos and you just go, man, I'm going through this John Cena show where there's just so many years of just bad characters and just people who Cena's on top because there is no one to push. And you just think Ron Killings has had this in him all the time. Like, we saw it when he was in TNA, and just being sleeping on this guy. And unfortunately, it is he's 53 now or whatever. It's in the twilight of his career, where obviously he's not going to be the same physically as he was 10 years ago, 20 years ago, whatever. But it's nice to finally see it. But you do think, man, you've had this guy this whole time, and he's just been cracking jokes backstage pretty much.
Yeah, it's true. He's still in tremendous shape. It's going to be interesting to see, him compete in a perhaps more lengthy, competitive, aggressive style. I'm looking forward to seeing what that looks like. I'd love him to go through someone else first, in the sense of, I think this is to be seen as younger, but he's still, he's getting up there as well. And I'd like him to go through a couple of heels on TV, perhaps, but
to build him up as more legit before this Cena match taking place next week. Yeah, I'm with you there. Beat the shit out of a Grayson Waller or Austin Theory or something like that.
Exactly.
Some fodder just to really build up. But yeah, we're getting that match on TV next week. What are you expecting from this?
Well, I'm expecting. I think we're all expecting the result to be what the result is going to be.
Yeah.
But I think the fact that I don't really know what to expect, is good, because I'm interested. Let's see how well he can go these days. I saw R-Truth in Belfast at a house show in, I think, 2017 or something like that. Now, I know that's still 8 years ago, but and he was insanely popular with the crowd, as he always is. Does the full rap on his way out. It's the house show presentation, but physically he looked very good. And we don't see him in matches very often.
Yeah.
I'm sure he's still training. He's in wonderful shape. So I don't want to build up my expectations too high. But, I think it'll certainly be interesting, if nothing else.
Yeah, and it's interesting where he goes after this. Like, is he going to be at this kind of, Jey Uso level where they're going to start putting him in more? Like, does he flirt with the world heavyweight title down the line and stuff like that? Or is it going to be this Cena match and kind of quietly like drift into the background again? I'm not sure.
If Vince was still in charge, you can bet he'd be drifting into the background back again, because he would have resented this entire getting back in, backlash, getting more money, getting all of that. And his MO was always to kind of punish the talent in one way or other.
Yeah. How dare you get over? How dare you be popular?
Exactly, yeah. By making them look like fools, So will Triple H be as vindictive as we go through this final run? Possibly. Who knows, But I hope not. I hope we see him still floating around sort of upper mid card, and perhaps, like you said, the world heavyweight scene. I don't see why not.
Yeah. And then we had, Brain and I talked about it briefly on Tuesday's show, but Gunther defeating Jey Uso in the main event of Monday Night Raw to become once again world heavyweight champion. It seems like we're going to Goldberg versus Gunther. Goldberg's been talking about he's kind of getting ready for his one last run. We do know a Saturday night's main event is coming down the line in Atlanta. Now, first of all, I don't necessarily think that this match needs the title for it to be Gunther versus Goldberg.
Mm-hmm.
Do you see it being more than one match? Like, is Goldberg just gearing up for one last match, or is he going to have a little mini run over this summer with a potentially SummerSlam match in there as well? In which case, is he winning the world title?
I wouldn't be surprised. It wouldn't shock me at all. I think of the two options, if he's physically capable, that's not a small if. I think they'll want a little bit of a run, if they can get one, out of Goldberg, because I don't think, as well viewed as it was in ratings terms, the past Saturday night's main event, I don't think Saturday night's main event is necessarily the platform for a one and done Goldberg return.
No,
particularly
even
as
if it is Atlanta, it just doesn't feel
even in Atlanta,
with the commercials and all that.
It's so riddled with commercial breaks. It's a bit like watching the highlights. I think Way mentioned this at one point in one of his reviews. It's a little like watching a highlight, package that they put on YouTube, except interrupted by ads, because match times are, some of them have 2 ad breaks in them, and the actual visible part of the match is 3 or 4 minutes. It's a very strange presentation, particularly when they're putting 5 matches into a 2-hour show. That is more like 1 hour 10. When you factor in all of
that.
Yeah. So I think yes is I lean towards Goldberg winning the title in the way he won it from Kevin Owens, when he won the Universal title, the red one as it was at that stage. A very quick match where he manages somehow to jackhammer this guy and take the title from him. And then we can get a bit of a build where he appears on weekly television for a while in the run up to SummerSlam. That's where I think they'd want to go. But again, the big question mark over this is how physically capable is Goldberg at this point?
Yeah. I do think now the title's being involved, I'm exactly with you. I think it is going to be a little bit of hot potatoing to give Goldberg this one last title. You know what I'd really like to see? And he's been knocked out of the King of the Ring already, but obviously we do have 2 championships. I'd love to see Goldberg take this title from Gunther, go to SummerSlam, Bron Breakker versus Goldberg at SummerSlam. Breakker wins and Seth cashes in, and we can pull Breakker out of this group. You can always find another replacement for him, but I do think Breakker's lost a bit of his personality since being paired with Seth.
Yeah,
it is kind of hot-shotting the feud a bit. Like, I know a lot of people are like, they could do the Batista Triple H thing. I don't necessarily think you need to go that long with it. And just Breakker is so hot, like having Seth take the title from him and have a little bit of a feud between those two going into the winter, I'd kind of be all for.
Breakker's lost some of his luster in the past few weeks in this faction. And I think there's a broader point there about factions, even ones with someone like Paul Heyman speaking for them. Like, look at the Death Riders in AEW, and I know we're going to talk a bit more about this week's AEW programming. Pretty much everyone in that faction, and I include Pac in that before he got injured, is just one of Moxley's goons. With the exception of Marina Shafir, who could, for obvious reasons, sticks out because she's this badass woman, taking on a lot of people, and that kind of has a uniqueness to it that the others don't. But there's something about factions. I understand it's a way to get people on TV. It's a way to build up a threat. It's a way to build angles with interference. But I agree with you that Breakker is definitely, I think, better on his own. And I like your idea.
I think it's the fact you've got Bronson Reed in there, who's another big guy. It just makes them feel like 2 security guards behind Seth Rollins. I think if instead of Reed, you had, let's say, Ricky Saints, who you could draw similarities with Seth Rollins, the fashion, the like, smarmy, like quick-witted quick on the mic, that kind of thing. You've got 2 distinct different people there. You've got the heavy, you've got the sort of Seth Rollins of the future, if you will, and kind of like you had with Randy and Batista being quite different from each other at the time. I mean, now you look at Randy, he's the size of Batista from back then, but I think Ryan in the chat saying it's just J&J security but extra large. It does kind of have that
kind of
two bouncers behind Seth Rollins deciding who's coming into the club and who's not.
It's an interesting decision to present them this way as well, because they're kind of dressed like security people as well.
And especially when Solo's guys are like, I assume Hikuleo's going to be replacing Fatu in Solo's group. Again, it's just 2 big blokes, which it makes them more generic rather than having a faction where everyone is, you can see how they are individually as well.
100%. It was about to bring up the same thing. And on the SmackDown side, you're getting the same thing. You know, I haven't loved Jeff Cobb's introduction so far, and we had him literally wearing the sort of it's been memed a little bit actually. That picture of him, you know, just standing in the background like a heavy wearing sunglasses, and it looks like Hikuleo as soon as next week, because there's been, you know, something has been teased on Solo side, you know, as to create a bigger threat. Hikuleo probably turns up in that role as well on SmackDown next Friday. So yeah, I agree with you that to get back to the real point of this, that Braun Breaker's probably suffered the most out of all of this, because the crowd are, I mean, they whether he's a heel or not, they love to bark along with him. They love the kinetic sort of energy of this guy. He's just incredible. You know,
and I've enjoyed his promos in the past. Like, he's not bad on the mic either. Like, he's you've stripped something away from him for sure, but you can get it back. Now,
the cash-in idea is one very good way to do that, because then you build up a feud between two people that I imagine the audience would really like to see go up against each other, and you get rid of one of the briefcases reasonably soon, which I'm still a fan of. That you don't have this run all the way to nearly the cash-in expiring. Yeah, with both the women and the men. So.
Now, what's this mean for Jey Uso as well? Do you think it was the right? Like, I personally think the title reign was the right length. It hasn't lit the world on fire. It was a nice moment at WrestleMania. It's cool to see, you know, the tag team guy break through, and now you've got him as someone I said on Tuesday's show, he's babyface Kane at this point. He's someone who can be a legit challenger, but you're filling in gaps between the big pay-per-views, maybe. But how do you feel about Jey's?
I tend to agree. I kind of liked that when the World Heavyweight title came back, or at least this iteration of it, you know, it was blessed with a couple of really strong runs and lengthy ones with Seth and with Gunther to establish it. I don't think you need to do that with Jey. He's absolutely over with the crowd just because he is at this point. He's very hot. He doesn't need the title. Crowd love to eat and eat again, you know, whenever. Yeah. I'm not. I don't know how big an island I'm on, but I don't love him in ring. I feel he's more of a character and a presentation that the crowd really love than an in-ring, you know, blistering talent who puts on tremendous matches. But he doesn't need to be, I guess. At the moment, you know, it's the character is more the thing. The presentation is more the thing. The crowd love to see him in person, and that comes through the TV. And so that's great. And none of that requires the belt.
No, not at all. And they've given him his moment, and that's enough. But now let's get a little bit more serious with the title now, moving forwards. We see it might be a good time to move to King of the Ring, as it kind of pertains the World Heavyweight Championship. We've got Ryan in the chat saying, I'm saying Gunther retains because Gunther is dropping to Sammy at SummerSlam, and says, I do think Gunther's retaining because he is dropping to Sammy, who will win King of the Ring, just for Seth to cash in. And Magan saying he thinks Sammy winning his first world title will be at WrestleMania. Now let's have a little look at the King of the Ring.
Seth will be the one to do the honors rather than.
I mean, you've set up Seth and Sammy as like an ongoing story, right? Like I think Sammy versus Gunther, we've already seen Sammy beat him for the IC title. Like, they've had quite a few matches. I think I'd prefer Sammy to beat Seth for that title. I really don't think we should be turning Sammy heel, which keeps on being teased. Like, I don't want to see that at all. No. I do want babyface Sammy showing that you don't need to cheat and stuff to win. But let's see. We've already got Sammy moving on to the next round. He'll be facing Randy Orton, who won the 4-way on SmackDown last night. Cody Rhodes won his match and will face either Bronson Reed, Rusev, Sheamus, or Jey Uso. Do you see that being Jey winning that match?
I think so. Yeah. I think they want to build him back up after the title loss. Even though, as we've just discussed, it doesn't matter that much. It sort of gives him some cachet back, to defeat these other three. But I also think there's an element of unpredictability in all this. I mean, I wouldn't have been surprised. Sammy's very popular in Saudi, despite them not wanting him to be there for the first few shows that they put on there. The crowd in attendance at the Saudi shows really, really like him. And I thought this was possibly set up, this tournament, for a Sammy win. That wouldn't surprise me either. So there's a lot of different directions that we could go in. I'm interested to hear what you think, Davie, about these possibilities.
I think the most interesting final would be Sammy versus Cody, because I think they're the two most likely to win. I don't think we'll be getting... I don't see Randy winning, because I don't see a Randy Gunther match or Randy Goldberg match or Randy Cena again. I don't see Jey, because he's just had this run, and I certainly don't see them doing Jey Uso versus Gunther another time at SummerSlam. Like, it's already been too many times. So I think it's Sammy or Cody. Now, it's whether you want, does Cody win the title at SummerSlam? And then for the last run of the year, we can have Cena being a babyface, because realistically, come December, he should be a babyface. He should be giving the fans what they want and go out on top that way. So is SummerSlam the time you put the belt back on Cody? But Sammy versus Gunther, Seth, whoever, that could work too. I think that's where maybe the setting of Saudi Arabia is a good thing, because I think if you were to do Sammy versus Cody in the final in the States, I think you risk Cody getting booed again. And I think you've got to be a little careful with how you treat Cody, because he really should be your top babyface. And I do think this Cena feud has hurt him. But I think a Saudi crowd are less I think they'd just be cheering for both guys and less likely to turn on Cody in the final.
I think so too. They seem a very compliant crowd for the most part, but they do like who they like, and they love Sammy. So that's what put me in that kind of frame of mind. When Cody went forward and it was even in the tournament, that was a bit of a surprise to me, because I thought, well, how did they have him do anything else but lose? But of course, in a fatal four-way, or win rather, but in a fatal four-way, they can get all sorts of interference going on, and no DQs and all of that. So while I can absolutely see that being the match, I think Cody could well be taken out, perhaps at the hands of Cena, or who knows, because Sammy Jey would also be a fairly interesting pairing.
Yeah.
And I think
history with them,
that with their history, and you would get a crowd favorite. I think in Sammy,
you're getting a babyface final this year. That's happened. I mean, looking at it's all baby faces, unless you have, Bronson Reed going through to the next round as a bit of a wild card. And then you've got the whole Seth's group to take out Cody potentially. But I do see it being babyface versus babyface in the final. Whether you have, Karrion Kross help Sammy to win without Sammy's consent, that could be a thing. Sammy's knocked down and doesn't realize that Kross has taken out his opponent, could be something you do, and therefore you kind of protect everyone in that circumstance. I don't know.
Yeah, I think the fact that there's not a clear they're definitely doing this, or there's a 90% chance they're doing this, is good. We enjoy that, when the booking isn't obvious. I do think the Karrion Kross thing is hilarious, because an awful lot of that has been going on in the international breaks. So the US audience, who are clearly the largest audience, make up sort of half the global viewership, I think, for Raw on Netflix, is not seeing this? You know, so I don't.
I wish Netflix had the option where you could watch the in between stuff when you watch it the next day.
Yeah.
Like I don't want to watch that little rave music, we'll be right back thing, but some of these promos in between segments, or like when the matches go through, like I don't mind watching some of the time, but when you're watching after the fact, it does just skip through it.
I'd like them to at least offer a version where you can watch the entire match, you know, which is what we get if you're watching it live outside the US. On SmackDown, for example, the matches continue throughout what would be a commercial break on USA.
Now, I do wish, like with these tournaments, that I say this every year. There's a tournament. I want something a bit more in depth. You know, this is a 3-round tournament. It's gone over 2 weeks. I would love next year. Next year's the World Cup, and it's taking place in North America. You have NXT, AAA, Raw, SmackDown. Do 4 groups. Do a group stage, like round robin, and then quarters, semis, finals. You can book this thing over 6 weeks, 2 months. You have so much programming, hours and hours of programming. You've got a massive roster. You could do, like, you can do 32-man tournaments if you wanted to. And because you have, like, inconsequential matches on TV all the time with 0 stakes, like, have these matches, even if it is a Tozawa versus a Austin Theory in the first round match, it's got some stakes. And I would love to see the actual proper, like, World Cup format. And think if you were to have mix these groups up, so it's NXT, Raw, SmackDown, AAA, whatever, you can tune into NXT this week, because we have Randy Orton versus Obafemi, and we have Mr. Iguana versus whoever, you know, like, I think could be really cool. And you can do the TNA as well, like Evolve. Like, there's all these little promotions where you can just have a melting pot of this thing, do it over 2 months, and you can build like you have in the World Cup. You can have your Icelands, you know, you can have someone who really shouldn't be beating someone, like a Randy Orton is Spain, who just doesn't get out of the group stages when really he should have. You know, you can tell these little stories, and you can help get people over. Not saying that a Mr. Iguana or like a Sean Legacy or whoever should win the whole thing, but you could surprise by getting them through to the quarters or something like that, where I think it would be great. And especially now, Ryan saying Noah as well. We've got all these different promotions.
That say the extended WWE universe, I use the term not meaning fans, is big these days. So like, we know you could bring in people from Noah. They have that arrangement. TNA.
Like, have it running throughout the whole summer, and the winner goes on to main event Survivor Series or whatever you want to do. Like, I get sick of these sort of 8-person bracket tournaments, because to me that's not a tournament. Like, it's
barely a tournament when you've got these play-in matches that are multi-persons at the moment. We've had an awful lot of triple threats and fatal 4-ways in the last few weeks to get straight to a semi-final. Feels barely a tournament to me.
Like, think you have it on TV as well, when they're this is going to be, these are 2 not really big teams, so we're going to put that on the 8 a.m. game or whatever. And similarly, these 2 guys, that can be on main event, a main event first round, like, box match. Like, I think would be really good. But you know what wrestling fans would be like? They'll be like, it's so confusing. I'm so confused. Like, I wish they'd give it a go.
I do too. I think it would be a great way to program post-Mania to SummerSlam as well.
Make it interesting, like 2 months of programming to get to that thing. Peak it at the final is at SummerSlam, or however you want to do it. And make all your programming must-see. You're promoting everything you're doing. And like, you've got to tune into NXT this week. You've got to check out the AAA show on YouTube, or check out Evolve on Tubi and all that kind of stuff. Let's have a little look at the women's Queen of the Ring so far. We had Roxanne Perez defeating Kyrie, Liv, and Rhea, who's advanced to the semi-final, and she'll be facing Jade Cargill, who beat Michin, Nia Jax, and Piper Niven. And then we had Alexa Bliss in maybe a bit of a upset here, defeating Alba Fire, Candice LeRae, and Charlotte Flair. And she'll be taking on the winner of Asuka, Ivy Nile, Raquel Rodriguez, and Stephanie Vaquer. Which that one to me is interesting because, first of all, Neal, where is BFAB in this tournament?
Yes, a question on everyone's lips, I think. She's been killing it in the ring lately on SmackDown. She's got a fantastic new finisher.
Mm-hmm.
The Fabulost.
Yes.
And she's just gone missing. I think she might have been on Main Event or something, but I don't really watch that. I think I just sort of caught on social media that she'd appeared. So she's not injured. So yeah, this is outrageous. Candice
For those of you that don't know, BFAB is Neal's favorite wrestler in WWE at the moment.
There's a slight with some irony. I have to.
But yeah, a returning Asuka and Stephanie Vaquer in the same match, that makes it a little tricky for me because Stephanie Vaquer's got so much steam behind her right now and is insanely popular. And I could even potentially see her going all the way in this thing, the way they've been booking her so far. But also Asuka returning after, well over a year off. I think you'd want to bring her in pretty strong as well. So where do you see them going with this match?
The conventional booking would be Vaquer. They're so behind her, clearly, she should win. But like you said, Asuka's the real wild card here, with this return. And I don't think losing, because it's a fatal four-way, not being the winner can be done in a way that keeps you very strong with Stephanie. So I'd lean towards Asuka as the more likely.
And therefore, what do you see the final being? Roxanne, Jade, and Alexa, and we're assuming either Asuka or Stephanie.
Very interesting. What do you think, Davie, before I formulate?
Like I can see Jade. Like I could see I could see Jade eventually winning the title with Naomi cashing in to continue that thing. From a wrestling point of view, I'd love to see Roxanne versus Asuka or Stephanie in the final. I think that would be Roxanne versus Stephanie in the final could be a great way of just really getting these two over. Like we know they can both kill it in the ring. But I think Roxanne versus Asuka is a match I'd really like to see as well. This one's a little tougher than the men's, I think, because I really think it's between. I'm kind of ruling out Alexa, but you could really go at least for the final with any of those three.
I wouldn't be surprised on the flip side if they want a bit of a push for Alexa. She's very popular with the crowd. She's not long back. She's been kind of meandering a little bit, so it wouldn't shock me.
They're kind of trying to rehab her a bit because I do think they fumbled her return.
Yeah. I mean, I did think, again, conventionally, Jade, she progresses, but perhaps not because, maybe Naomi interferes, keeps that all alive. I don't know. And again, that's fun. I prefer it when it's not kind of obvious, Yeah, but you're right. It's a bit of a crapshoot. Yeah. When you look at those brackets, it's kind of I don't really know. There isn't an obvious, but there's.
I do think the injection of the NXT talent has really started to help the women's division. I think having the focus on Evolution coming up as well. I found it bizarre considering Triple H basically created the women's division in NXT and the Four Horsewomen and all that era. How bad the women's division's been on WWE main roster since Triple H has taken over, and I do think it started to take a step forward. I like that you have characters like Roxanne who have a clear character and focus on TV without her being involved in any of the women's titles at the moment. Vaquer naturally getting over. And I think Liv Morgan's been fantastic. Like, I think she's stepped up in all aspects so much. And we had her with Nikki Bella on Raw with a couple of unfortunate slip-ups from Nikki there. But then the rumor mill's been going, Stephanie Vacquet. The rumor mill's been going, and Brie Bella apparently in talks to return. Obviously, Liv Morgan is a women's tag champion. The women's tag championships were not a thing when the Bellas were around. I think it's inevitable, really. I think we're getting the Bellas versus Liv and Raquel at Evolution 2.
I do too. I think that's a shoe-in almost. Is the one that I put some money on if I were a betting man. And Nikki is billed for Raw tomorrow, and so is Liv addresses her attack has been sort of put out there by the usual Sunday video clip from Adam Pearce came out earlier on today, and he mentioned that Liv Morgan will address her actions or whatever last week. Although he funnily enough is on vacation. He mentioned in the little clip Nick Aldis will be taking the reins of the show because Pierce is on holiday.
So I wouldn't go on holiday, or was it the other way around the other week?
No, I think you're right. I think Aldis was looking after Raw maybe a month ago or so.
Yeah,
as well. Yeah,
just booked a bunch of matches for pay-per-views and
yeah. So I don't know what's going on, but he seemed fine in the video. I think it looked like a shoot. He really is on vacation. So I think the Bellas are getting back together, and it'll get a big pop. I wonder how much improvement we'll have seen in Brie.
Yeah. I've always had a soft spot for the Bellas. I think the fan base are incredibly cruel towards them, and obviously, like, Nikki had a couple of slip-ups this week which didn't help, like the Stephanie Vacquet thing. And I've seen a lot of backlash from Io Sky thanking Nikki for paving the way for women. But I think there is some truth in that as well. Look, we're not talking from a wrestling point of view, but I think a WWE marketability kind of thing. Like, until the Bellas and AJ Lee, you could not get a women's wrestling t-shirt, and that changed. Like, I have a Brie Bella t-shirt, like I've got a Nikki Bella hat, stuff like that. And it's not necessarily about the wrestling with them, but a lot of WWE isn't about the wrestling. We were just talking about Jey Uso being world heavyweight champion. But they, with Total Divas, did bring in so many women fans, and that has created a lot of these women fans on discovering other women's talents, inspiring them, making them want to be wrestlers, like that kind of thing. And we see that now with your Roxanne Perez generation of wrestlers. So like, I have read the book and their book, and it did make me really warm to the Bella Twins. And, I don't think they're going to be sticking around forever, but it kind of makes sense. There is no women's tag division in WWE. You have these titles. Who are the teams? You just released Casey and Kaden. Like, what other teams are there? You got Maxine and Natalia? Like, no thanks. To be honest, I'd rather see the Bellas come back. And even if they are completely shit in ring, it's like, it is something kind of nostalgic. And I always say, like, not everything has to be about you when you're watching these shows. Like, wrestling is a variety show. You're not going to like everything. And CM Punk might be your favorite wrestler. To some people, there are people who still to this day love Nikki Bella, and she does mean something to them. So I'm perfectly fine with this.
There's a lot of fondness for the Bellas, and I also saw some of the feedback about the paving the way tweet, and I react against that too, because you're right. I mean, what they did perhaps wasn't set the world on fire in ring, but they created, not just on the shows itself, but in Total Divas and then Total Bellas, actual mainstream crossover stars that people knew. And I think that isn't an easy thing to do. So I give them credit for that. The personalities are kind of, I like them too, as the people at least that we saw portrayed on the reality show. I've sort of invested in their lives. Felt very sorry whenever the Laurinaitis stuff came out. Because he was their dad-in-law for a while. The illnesses they've been through, you do get invested in their lives and all of that. And I think that's down very largely to Nikki and Brie Bella. And like you said, particularly in WWE, it's not all about what happens bell to bell. In fact, it's maybe 50-50, if that.
Yeah, I always see a lot of they just want to be famous. They don't care about the wrestling. And Magan says here, coming back from neck surgery is not an easy feat. If it was just about being famous, Nikki Bella would never have wrestled again after breaking her neck. You'd be like, I'm done. And she's come back multiple times since that injury. So, yeah, I do think, and it's working in a bar, people find out podcasting and stuff. I meet lots of strangers, and it's always interesting to know who has crossed over. Who do people know about?
Yeah.
Roman Reigns has been the biggest star in WWE for quite a few years. More people know who the Bellas are than Roman Reigns. And that's just from talking to people that don't know about wrestling. They're like, oh yeah, Total Divas, or Nikki was on the last season of Traitors and stuff like that. There is that crossover that does help the company.
Oh, completely agreed. I mean, I think that some of us who are big fans, it doesn't really compute that I could show a picture on my phone of Roman Reigns to some of the people I work with in the office environment, and they won't know who that is.
Oh, that's Jason Momoa.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah, is he Fast and the Furious? Maybe. You might get some vague kind of, I think I've seen him before, but they wouldn't know. They wouldn't know who he is. They would know who the Bella Twins are. Most of them.
Well, sticking on the women's division, we had Bayley returning on Monday, attacking Becky Lynch. Do you see this being SummerSlam? Do you see this being Evolution? What is Lyra still involved in the picture here? Where do you see this going?
I originally thought Lyra and Becky would be continuing post winning the title back. This has sort of put the kibosh on that. I feel like really it's going to be a program, and it's long in the making. I suppose because, well, in the retcon sense, it was Becky who took Bayley out of the WrestleMania match, so she's got plenty in storyline to be angry about. So I feel like, this is probably the direction that we're going in. Ryan's suggesting a triple threat.
I think we could get there at some point, across these next few shows. I could see a triple threat, but I think the bigger match is Bayley versus Becky. And
I think so too. And I think what's complicating matters is we're in the run-up to SummerSlam, but we're also in the run-up to Evolution. And I think, we've got to book both of those. Evolution, I feel, will probably be more of a stepping stone for the women's, for at least at the top of the card for the women's division. What's going to happen over 2 nights, don't forget, of SummerSlam. So it's interesting though, because again, like we talked about with King and Queen of the Ring, there is some unpredictability here. I've really enjoyed the Becky Lynch and Lyra rivalry, and I would like that to continue, and there's certainly room for it too. But as we see on screen, this I see Bayley and Becky Lynch being the first sort of stop on this train ride.
I think it could main event Evolution, even though it's not your women's championship. I think they have had matches before, but they've never really had a big feud that I can really remember. There's been nothing, no big matches between Becky and Bayley, whereas I can recall, big Bayley Sasha matches, big Charlotte Sasha matches, Charlotte Becky matches, and the Bayley Becky one is kind of one that I think hasn't really been touched to that level. And I think you could main event the Evolution pay-per-view with this. I think it adds also more to Becky's heel persona, where if you then do pick up the rivalry again with Lyra for one more match, she can be like, you know, you weren't main eventing when you were holding this title. I made this title the title, all that sort of stuff. And I think them being like two big names who, you know, have paved the way for the women's division in WWE, I would close the show with this one.
Yeah, I think that makes complete sense. Like you said, and Megan is our source of facts. You know, as the 6-woman tag, yes, I do remember that at Mania. I had forgotten entirely about them having a cage match on Raw. But yes, a sustained rivalry between these two that can be built up and continue perhaps at SummerSlam. Yeah, I'm all for it. And I agree with you. I think that could very, very well be the main event of Evolution and could continue from there.
Anything else from WWE this week that you would like to touch on before we move on?
Nothing obvious, Davie. No. Naomi, I think, continues to impress me with her heel work. Her promo on Friday wasn't quite up to the level it has been, but I've also really enjoyed her on social media. I don't know if you saw the clip she posted of what's in the Money in the Bank briefcase. She's rummaging through it.
Oh, okay.
And there's gaffer tape, so she can kidnap people, I assume.
Right.
There's a flick knife.
Okay.
A taser gun, and a miniature figure of Jimmy Uso is tucked in there as well. The contract, of course, is in it as well. But you just see her she's rummaging through it. She grabs out the stun gun and makes it flicker, and then there's just this maniacal laughter, and it really made me laugh out loud. I just thought she is so great as this character.
It makes you forget that she has been a heel before, because that first heel run was so insignificant and so like just personalityless.
I had completely forgotten about that until I was reminded of it.
I think I was there when she turned heel. I'm pretty sure she turned heel on Paige, and I think I was at that Raw. But yeah, it was so dull, and I think she's just oozing with personality now, and it's really great to see. Well, a bit of WWE news before we do move on is the sensation, which is Mr. Iguana, who took the wrestling world by storm with his Worlds Collide appearance, and reports out there that WWE are wanting to capitalize on this, that he was a huge merch mover. Mr. Iguana apparently getting some heat because he said in an interview that he's potentially skipping NXT and going straight to the main roster. What do you make of all this? And were you a fan of Mr. Iguana last week?
Yeah, in the novelty sense, I think that this could burn out fairly fast. But I've thought that about lots of things in wrestling before that have much longer shelf life than I would have imagined in the first place. This guy caught people's imaginations last weekend, and WWE are usually very quick to jump on something like that. And of course, the T-shirt was like immediately out there. Apparently, one of the top selling pieces of merch. So, he made a bit of a blunder, I think, in saying what was being said to him privately.
Yeah,
perhaps there's a cultural issue there with he's just not familiar with what you should and shouldn't say in what the bookers are doing and what have you. So I hope he gets forgiven and he gets a chance. But I don't know how much longevity there is in all of this.
Can be a bit of a fandango, maybe.
Perhaps.
Or he could be an Orange Cassidy. Who knows?
Yeah, who knows?
It could take off. Where do you see him ending up? Is he joining the Judgment Day? Is he replacing is he replacing Jacob Fatu in Solo's bloodline? What are we doing with Mr. Iguana?
I think he's a bit of a lone a Lone Ranger, Mr. Iguana. Apart from the iguana, of course, it's him against the world.
Have a love story with Maxine Dupree, maybe.
Why not?
Yeah. I get it. Like he was hugely popular last week, and obviously the gimmick is we've seen him before on AAA shows, and we've just been like, "What? This is crazy." Wrestling iguana. It's funny. It's stupid. This is all part of pro wrestling. As much as I love my, Okada Omegas and all of that, like, yeah, a wrestling iguana with a puppet iguana biting people is also pro wrestling.
Yeah. But yeah, like you have seen him before. Like I'm not a huge AAA follower, but I've watched the occasional Triple Mania, and he just struck me as part of the weirdness that is sometimes Lucha Libre. We used to have those opening contests where they were dressed up as as Marvel characters. Some of them. It's so strange, and but very bad costumes as well. And I thought, there's no way this can be sanctioned by Marvel, but apparently it was. There's a deep sort of vein of strangeness in some of the Lucha stuff in AAA. So yeah, if he's cutting through, then why not? Let's give him a little run.
Yeah. Well, let's now move over to AEW. AEW had their second week in a row of 4-hour programming with this week's Summer Blockbuster. To start with, what did you think of the pacing of this show? Did you? I personally thought it was booked a little better than the Fyter Fest. I thought they promoted more matches. They made it feel like a bigger deal. However, I got about 3 hours through and then had to finish it off the next day. I did feel it kind of very much turned into Collision by the second half, but overall, I think it was a better job than the previous week.
Yeah, I would say so too. I can't really speak to the live experience because neither week, I am a bit of a nocturnal person when I can be, and that's more towards the weekend though than midweek. So I would often watch Dynamite on a Wednesday night. That would start at 1 a.m. my time, and 3 a.m. isn't crazy for me to go to bed, but 5 a.m. on a Wednesday night / Thursday morning is crazy for me. So I haven't been watching it live, but I can well imagine that taking in these 4-hour blocks in one sitting with all of the commercials is too much, because it's even too much for me to consume in one go after the fact. And I've been watching them on the Thursday. I've been taking numerous breaks just to go off and make a coffee or do whatever and then come back to it. But I do agree that I think the build-up to this week's block of programming was better. And we got pretty much 2 distinct programs. We got that last week as well, but I think more so this week, Collision was very much an episode of Collision. There wasn't an awful lot to write home about. Whereas Dynamite was much more noteworthy and was really good as well. That 30-minute time limit draw, let's talk about it.
Yeah. Big angle coming out from sorry, what was it called? Summer Blockbuster was the Okada attack on Kenny Omega, with Kenny spitting up his intestines from that he attacked the diverticulitis with an elbow drop, but also Don Callis being part of the this presentation of Okada as well. What are your takeaways of this? Obviously, we've those original 4 matches are some of the greatest matches of all time. I thought they did a fantastic job with that video package, just telling us the history, telling us why this is important. They unveiled the new unified championship, which is absolutely gorgeous and paying homage to their history. It's got the One-Winged Angel on one side and the Rainmaker on the other side, which I think is really cool. And as per Fightful Select saying that this is essentially going to be like AEW's World Heavyweight Championship. It's like a 1B title rather than a mid-card title. But then, the big angle with Don Callis and Okada taking out Kenny. And what did you think of the angle? And what's your excitement level for this match?
My excitement level is high because it's these two. No matter what the build is going to be, I think, we know, and in AEW, the in-ring product at the, in the final analysis is really what they build to, and it's going to be awesome. I agree with you about the video package being really great. They don't lean on New Japan footage very much, and this, they had to do it. I think it was of necessity, but I'm really glad they did for those AEW fans who aren't, particularly plugged into the history between these two. That's great. I agree with you about the belt. When they unveiled it, I thought, when they were going to unveil it, I thought, well, here we go, another one. But it's a really nice title. I wonder what they'll do with it when one of these two isn't holding it, because it seems crafted around, they'll just switch the side plates, I guess, for something else.
No, I've heard that they're keeping the side plates. I think this is just, I think it's Tony kind of being like, look, these matches kind of changed pro wrestling, and it did really. So I think it's just his way of paying tribute to that, and I don't think it needs to go anywhere. Like it's unified these two titles, so these were the last two holders of the International and the Continental Championship, so it kind of honors them in that way as well. I absolutely think they should stay.
That's a very fair comment, because there are probably more historical, but there are nods within the world heavyweight, the WWE World Heavyweight title to apparently to I'm forgetting his name, sold out back in the day, Madison Square Garden. Sammartino, yeah. There are Bruno influences in there and references in there, apparently, in the patterning and symbology in that belt, but they're not that important, really. Whereas here, I suppose they're doing a modern day version of that, by bringing in those moves, depicting them on the belt, but it's not something you really have to zero in on every time. So that's a really good point. Quite like it. The angle was a touch goofy for my taste. Again, anything you see being comedically used, like for viewers on YouTube, Davie has the Omega spitting up the jam, the far too red kind of, what is this supposed to be? His parts of his intestine, coming up. I found that kind of too amusing to take seriously. But it'll all come down to the match, and I have no doubt Okada can still go. He hasn't been featured very much in ring lately, but he had a very good match a couple of weeks ago, and he didn't look like he'd lost even a step. So I expect this match to be tremendous.
I do find it funny. Like I'm hearing people talk as if these two are washed, and like maybe they're not the Okada and Omega of 2017, 2018, but Omega's already had one of the matches of the year with Gabe Kidd earlier in the year. Okada versus Speedball, I think, showed that there's definitely still of the old Okada in there, and that perhaps maybe it's been more his presentation in AEW where he hasn't reached those heights. Like, yes, this might not be like their Dominion match, but it's by no means going to be bad. And I hear people talking about it the same way they were talking about, going into John Cena, Randy Orton, and it's like, come on, like these two are still world class. Even if there may be a step down from a few years ago, is still better than majority of pro wrestlers out there, I would say.
Absolutely, yeah. Will they reach the heights of their best matches that they've ever had? I kind of doubt it, but I still think it's going to be absolutely brilliant for all of that. So, and maybe they could top them all. Who knows? I mean, I absolutely don't think that's impossible. I still fairly in your prime, as you point out. These guys are not old dudes, old geezers.
I think maybe my worry is the Don Callis aspect of it. I think makes you realize it's going to be there's going to be some bells and whistles attached to the whole thing. I think there's also I like Don Callis. I think he's a very effective heel. Like he gets genuine heat and not like your go away heat. There is an element of go away heat because he's so much on the show, but I think he's effective as a heel manager. I know he's got the history with Kenny, but I would have kind of preferred the Bucks if you need some sort of mouthpiece for Okada, just because the Bucks are there in all of those matches, like all those previous matches, they're in Kenny's corner. And I just think that kind of the mirroring of their original feud would make more sense rather than just, it's Don Callis in another segment. Like we've got Don Callis out there for a Lance Archer match. We've got Don Callis out there for a Rocky Romero match. We've got Don Callis out there for anything Kyle Fletcher, for anything Takeshita. It's just so much. And now he's attached with Okada. Like I thought Okada was the elite. Like I think you could have, I know you are, I guess maybe because you're building the Swerve angle, but I think there's a way to keep it all linked together.
I can only imagine they've got something in mind because, like you said, the Don Callis family is now about half the roster. It's like nearly all the heels, nearly, and it's kind of weird they went that way. I'd love to think this will be a really good match, and that sort of if there's Don Callis family interference, which feels inevitable, that hopefully gets nullified on the other side by some,
use it for a near fall, but not the finish. Like get a big near fall in it, and then them sent to the back, and we can have the final closing 5-10 minutes of just
exactly that
pure sort wrestling.
Somewhere towards 3/4 of the way into the match, something like that, down the final stretch, and then whoever is helping Kenny, they all just brawl to the back, and then we get a finish that we just that as fans we deserve. Yeah, I'm with you.
I think as for the angle as well, it's just I love Kenny, but there's just something so goofy about him, and it would be impossible for him to pull this off without looking goofy. Like just look at him, look at his face there. Just
I know, and there's something inherently slightly goofy about Kenny, and in all ways. So yeah.
And unfortunately, it does take away from it a little bit. Like you've built it up, like you've built up this new, beautiful looking title. You've got the Rainmaker, the One-Winged Angel on there. And then, he's spitting up his jam donut and with his eyes crossed. It's just did take away a little bit from it. But I am excited for the match. And I do think they've generally done this build pretty well.
Yeah, I'm with you.
And then we did have in the opening, we had Swerve Ospreay 2 in an incredible match. Went the distance, 30 minutes, and then the angle after with the Bucks coming out, handcuffing Swerve, going to super kick him with the thumbtack sneakers, and Ospreay takes the bullet and dies. But incredible match with these two, and leaving something still on the table. Like they gave us the match, but didn't, I see so many complaints, and it's all often Fed fans who are just like, oh, it's ridiculous. Like they can't even pick a winner. It's like, guys, you've been watching a company with DQ finishes for years. Like I would take a time limit draw, especially the quality of a match like this, over a DQ or a count out. Like again, been doing the John Cena, Randy Orton build on our champ is here. There's a match where Randy just turns and slaps the ref so we don't get a winner. Like give me 30 minutes of pure wrestling and prolong the story. Next time you get to this, it's even bigger because they didn't get a winner. But I absolutely love this.
The match was tremendous. And the fact that it was a time limit draw, they don't overdo them. When they brought in the time limits as part of the presentation in AEW right from the beginning, they tell us every match, what the time limit for a match is. And they did one, and my memory isn't quite as encyclopedic as some of our commenters, but they did one fairly quickly to sort of establish that these time limit draws can happen.
Cody Davie, I think, in one of the first Dynamites.
I think that's exactly right. But they haven't overdone them by any stretch of the imagination. I think this was a perfect place to do one in this 4-hour block of programming and leave us wanting more. And I like that. I'm one of those wrestling fans, as I think a lot of us are, who enjoy having a bit of choice. You've got the sort of more traditional sports entertainment in WWE, where, you know, a SmackDown before a PLE is going to be screwy finishes to every match, feeding into what's happening the next night, you know, on Saturday. And AEW have a very different way of progressing their rivalries and making you want to see more. And this is one occasional use of the time limit draw, which is great. You know, I
think we're also, you know, European football fans, soccer fans, where draws are a thing. So we're a lot more used to draws, I guess, in sport than maybe in North America. But I think it progresses the story. You know, the first match they had, there was a bit of screwiness with Nana, if I remember correctly. And now this one's a draw. So it still leaves it open that we haven't really had a fair, conclusive finish in this story.
Yeah. The other thing it reminded me of is how good Swerve is. Because everybody knows that Will is one of the best in the world, if not the best. And I know that Swerve is really good. But I don't know, there was just a level to this match where I thought, like, he's hanging so really well here. You know, I think it's because, I think I bring it up because I thought the world title reign was a wee bit underwhelming. I don't think it was the best. And, but as an in-ring talent, Swerve is absolutely up there.
I feel like we're heading towards, which I think we're getting the Hangman Page title reign. I strongly suspect he wins the match at All In. And I feel Tony probably realizes that. I think there was a lot of distraction with CM Punk coming into the company and that kind of thing, where Hangman's first reign wasn't really what it should have been. And I think that's kind of cool, because when you do have this second reign, I see Swerve being a champion again down the line. It can mean more. It can be that title reign we didn't get before and kind of right those wrongs. Ryan in the chat saying the ring announcer should have reminded the live crowd that they were running out of time. I kind of disagree. I kind of like I think they've established so well in AEW that, you know, title matches have a 60-minute time limit. Regular matches on TV have a 30-minute time limit. Continental Classic is 20 minutes. I think I like the abrupt end. Like, I was there for Danielson Omega, and I don't think they reminded the crowd then. There might have been a 5 minutes remaining or something, but I think I kind of like it that it comes out of nowhere, and especially with the way they were building with Swerve going for that Swerve stomp and the bell going.
They often do have the monotone kind of, there are 5 minutes remaining. You know, you've got that happening. I'm kind of with you in the sense, it would have avoided probably the boos or whatever, but that all feeds it. I don't mind that. The crowd kind of rebel at the end because, you know, they're not getting the finish, but then pretty quickly realize they've seen something special.
You tend to get that, don't you? You get the boos that lead into a bit of a standing ovation quite a lot of the time with this thing. And it's more like boo because, man, I want more, rather than this sucks. And then we had the angle after with the Bucks setting up the tag match at All In. We've been speculating on this show. Are we doing Swerve versus Ospreay at All In, or are we doing the tag match? And I feel that first All In, which was a whole lot of your big talent in tag matches and 6-man tags and multi-man matches and things like that, which felt disappointing. I think because, you know, we have 3 big marquee singles matches on this show with Hangman versus Mox, with Kenny versus Okada, and with Tony versus Mercedes. I really don't mind this being a thing. And the Bucks are main characters. They are bigger than the tag titles at this point. And we've seen the magic they've had in the past against Kenny and Hangman, against Kenny and Kota Ibushi. where I'm really up for this. And I think if it was all in one and this was a match, I'd be a lot lower on it. But I think because we've got those big singles matches, you can hold off Swerve Ospreay 3 to All Out if you wanted, or something like that. But I think this is a really strong direction.
Oh yeah, I absolutely agree. I think that's the way to go. The angle set it up well, and once it's sort of computed, oh right, yeah, this is probably where they're going to go for All In. Yeah, I'm for it, and they have a few weeks to sort of make it even more interesting.
And it also weaves in nicely now with the Hangman Mox story as well. Yeah. You've had this thing where we're trying to assemble the Avengers to take out the Death Riders and the EVPs, and Swerve and Ospreay haven't been on the same page with it because of the Hangman aspect. And now you have Hangman warning the Bucks. We know Ospreay and Swerve are both on the same side. Hangman saying, stay out of my business, stay out of Ospreay's business, and stay out of Swerve's business, which Nana and Swerve overheard. Like I've been loving this Hangman Swerve story. I think they've told it so well, and it's always been a focus, even when they've been off doing other things. Even when Hangman was off for a couple of months, it was still there. It was still lingering, and to still be interested in this feud after 3 years and it's still working, and it's got to build to Swerve helping Hangman at the end of All In, right?
I wouldn't be at all be surprised. Yeah, I think we're headed in that direction, and I agree with you too about the Hangman and Swerve thing. It's a level of subtlety you don't often get. I mean, in wrestling storylines, and from the moment where we had the argument backstage that ended with "I know," I thought this is great. You know, you don't often see this, and the way that they're sort of aligning but not forgiving, and sort of it's I don't know. There's just some levels to it that you don't often get.
Ryan in the chat saying, so is this their version of the Avengers assembling for Cody versus Roman at Mania 41? I feel they are completely going to do that. Like you'll have the Death Riders and probably the Bucks as well. And then on the babyface side, you know, we haven't seen Orange Cassidy for a while. He was involved in this. I could see him coming back. Potentially Darby, potentially Bryan Danielson, Ospreay, obviously, and then Swerve being the one to eventually help Hangman win. I do see them doing that. Do you see them being open to criticism there, with it being quite similar to the Mania 40 end?
Not really, because I feel like we've been headed in this direction, and most of the fans wouldn't be at all surprised by that, because no one loves, well, there may be some people out there, but I don't hear a lot of love for the Death Riders storyline. And I think we've made our peace that, you know, a while ago that it wasn't going to come to a conclusion until All In. And it almost needs, you know, some sort of team up aspect on both sides, you know, for it to really work, and hopefully to put an end to all of that. And then just as an aside, at the end of all of that, as much as I love Jon Moxley, I would send him on holiday for a while, you know, and bring him back sort of repackaged, doing something new.
Yeah, it should be the end of the Death Riders, like completely. Like they should all be. I don't want to see any of them hanging around with each other after this. No. Like, I think you are going to get, especially the tribalistic people, you are going to be getting that criticism, but the story does lend to it, and especially in a stadium setting, it works. And I think, yeah, as I said, you've got Ospreay, Swerve, Orange, Darby, Danielson, like Sting, maybe, who knows? I think you've got a lot of like fun surprise like entrances coming out to just help. And it's been building it. The Death Riders thing, I haven't liked it. I think it completely went off tracks quite early on. Like, it didn't become what it originally started out to be. No. And it did just become House of Torture. And I think because of the strength on the babyface side in the last few months, it's made the story interesting. I can't say the Death Riders have particularly done anything to kind of make me more invested in them or think what they're doing is particularly good work or storytelling, but the other side has made it work. And I think it will be good by the end of the night.
The only thing I've actively enjoyed about the Death Riders lately was Anarchy in the Arena, and that was because of the spectacle of it all. Yeah. It was because of the match and what was going on, and it was nothing to do with, the genesis of putting the title in the bloody briefcase and all the rest of that nonsense, that we've been subjected to for months.
Any other thoughts from AEW this week? We've got the Hurt Syndicate with MJF feuding with Mystico. Now we've got the MJF Mystico match next week.
Yeah, in Mexico City. I feel like that's interesting enough. The presentation of them as heels is still kind of intriguing because the crowd don't really want them to be. But doing, it's the ultimate heel move for to unmask Mascara Dorada and sort of ignite this Mystico feud for the next show. It's I'm kind of enjoying MJF in the Hurt Syndicate.
I just can't see what the direction is really.
It is difficult.
Are we having what's the tag match? Are they still going to be tag champions by All In? Like, what is the match there? Are we getting a 6-man at All In? Are we doing the break before All In and we're getting MJF Bobby? Like, I can't really see the direction for All In, although I'm enjoying the segments individually, if that makes sense.
It does make sense. And I kind of agree with you. I like them together. I feel like longer term, we know MJF is going to somehow turn on the rest of them. But how does he do that on his own? I don't know. Hopefully they've got something reasonable mapped out for all of that. But yeah, it's not something that's a turn off for me at all in the way that the Death Riders has been.
And I was assuming we were getting FTR, Edge, and Christian at All In, but there still seems to be a lot of storytelling if we are getting there, and mainly Christian and Edge teaming up. So I don't think that's going to be happening now at this point. It does
feel too close at this point. It's the 15th of June and we're less than a month.
Like Christian Cage versus Nick Wayne seems more likely. And I don't even know if they bother putting that on the show. So there's a lot of work if that's the direction they're going. And I can't really see a clear FTR match. And with Hurt Syndicate kind of leaning heel at the moment, I can't even see them going to FTR Hurt Syndicate either. So I'm a little confused with what's going on with some of your tag division right now.
Yeah.
And I guess finally thoughts on Mercedes and Toni Storm. I would say Mercedes steak looked better this week. A nice medium rare, unlike the things she had the week before. But
did she eat any of it this week? It looked edible. So
it looked a lot nicer. But I can't say that this match reminds me of what a lot of the WWE women's WrestleMania main events have been the last couple of years, where you look at it. I think Sasha Bianca, where you go, yeah, this match is going to be incredible, but what are you doing with the story here? And that's kind of how I feel here. Like, it makes complete sense. Mercedes has all these titles, but she doesn't have the world title. And Toni doesn't need all the other titles because she is the world champion. It's your two biggest stars going at it. But I think they've got some work to do.
I think so too. I will say I think Mercedes is getting better.
Yeah.
I thought she was better on commentary this week than she was last. And it's, I don't know. It's been a slow progression. She is one of the best female talents they have in ring.
100%.
It's been a slow progression on the mic. A lot of it has been kind of bad. I don't know. I'm into this match, though.
Yeah. Anything else from AEW before we move on?
I don't think so. There's not a lot to say about the rest of Collision, really.
Paragon, just like, fuck.
Yeah.
Like after that Kenny thing, watching Adam Cole come out in those shorts and that shitty blue and red Paragon shirt, it's just how the mighty have fallen. You know, the first Stadium All In just 2 years ago, he's building up to be in the main event, and he's just such an afterthought. This whole group just auraless now. It's sad to see.
Yeah, I feel like Josh Alexander hasn't set the world on fire either since his since his debut. But I must admit, I was never a tremendous fan of his in TNA either. You know, I think the gimmick of the just tough guy who wears the wrestling headgear, you know, isn't really enough on its own.
Yeah, I mean that his personality is being Don Callis family, and that's the problem with this faction being the size as it is. Like I really like Josh Alexander as a wrestler, but yeah, he has yet to really establish what he is in AEW. Speaking of aura, Neal, what is this?
This, for those who are listening instead of watching, is the latest incarnation of Sonata, who changes his look now every single big show. He will come out in something outrageous, and he's wearing kind of
Giant Gonzalez bodysuit.
It's a bit like a Giant Gonzalez. I think it's supposed to be a generic tanned bodybuilder wearing those little pouches that the bodybuilders used to wear to sort of cover their genitals.
Smoking a cigar like he's the Giant in WCW, wearing Mr. Iguana sunglasses and a Jeff Jarrett guitar.
The guitar is the through line. When New Sonata post title run emerged, he came out with these kind of amps and speakers all over his shoulders, and I can say this, the gayest little kind of leather shorts you've ever seen with a little chain and stuff. And I thought, this is his new look. Yeah, that's true. We're in June. This is his new look. But that was a one night only. He's been coming out for at least the big New Japan shows and just bizarre stuff. The guitar, though, seems to be a fixture.
So he wrestled in it. This wasn't just his entrance gear. He wrestled in this?
No, it was removable.
Oh, that's a shame. Yeah. He should have. Okay, so I haven't even looked at the card of this show, to be honest. I am very much out of the loop of New Japan. It's summer. August is coming up. It is the time I like to try and get into New Japan and the G1, but fill me in with some of the big things that happened at Dominion. And you mentioned at the top of the show, we do have some direction for the G1 brackets as well.
We do, yeah, although it's not tremendously exciting, I'll have to say. Spoiler alert on that. So just quickly, there were title changes today at Dominion. So if you're waiting to catch up with it, then that's your warning. But moving from the main event backwards, that was the only title on the line that was retained. So Hiroki Goto is still champion after a challenge from Shingo Takagi. And that was the main event, which was around half an hour and very good match. Gabe Kidd is your new global heavyweight champion. He defeated Yota Tsuji to take that title. Okay. There was a rather bloody dog collar chain death match, which I'm running through the results first before I get into any sort of meat of any of this. Evil won. He defeated David Finlay. Oleg Boltin, the big amateur wrestler turned pro, who's, I think, improving. Well, every time I see him, I'm impressed. He beat Takeshita for the Never Openweight Championship.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so that's probably one of the bigger from an AEW viewers. standpoint, that's probably one of the bigger headlines to come out of this. The IWGP Tag Team Championships also changed hands, with Taichi and Ishii beating Okan and Callum Newman. And the Junior Heavyweight Tag Championships were also on the line. Dookie, who I'll get into that. Dookie and Show are from House of Torture, are your new winners of the new holders of the Junior Heavyweight Tag titles after having beaten Master Watto and Yo. And the House of Torture of it all is one of the more off-putting things for me about the show. It has swollen its ranks with not one, not two, but three new members. The first match of the main card was featured Bad Luck Fale rebranding himself as Don Fale and joining Sanada, Ren Narada, and Yujiro in the against the Bullet Club War Dogs in House of Torture. This also featured Chase Owens low blowing his own War Dogs partner Drilla Maloney and joining the joining House of Torture as well, and unfurling this sort of House of Torture flag. So we had that, and then we had the return of Dookie. Now the challengers are supposed to be
Dookie got injured at Wrestle Kingdom, right?
Yeah, that's right. So Kanemaru was supposed to be the challenger to team with Show, but he came out with his elbow in a sling, and that turned out to be a sort of misdirection as Dookie makes his sort of surprise return, revealing himself as a new House of Torture member, and it was he who teamed with Show. The elbow injury, though, was fake as well. So there was sort of relentless, there was steel pipes, there was wrenches, there was all the usual House of Torture bollocks here. But we've got Dookie back, and he's also now in House of Torture.
So you got like 4 new members on this show, essentially. It's
pretty much
something like
that, yeah. So for all of those who were hoping for a winding down or a change of direction from the House of Torture shenanigans, we're just going to get more of it. It looks like.
Anything you recommend? Sort of, what was your match of the night?
The main event, I think, was the best match on the card. So that should, if you've got access to New Japan World, that's actually the co-main was pretty good as well. The 3 top of the card matches were pretty good. But if you want a more seasoned outlook on all of this, and you happen to be a Post Wrestling Cafe member, there will be a dedicated review from Bruce Lord and Karen Peterson on this, and they know a lot more than I do. I was really watching this to kind of round up the results for a piece on the Post Wrestling website. I cannot pretend to be
knowing the ins and outs.
No, I don't. Yeah. Week to week watch.
I don't blame you. But it does look like we've got some blocks as well for the G1. If this is all correct here, got Block A so far announced as Hiroki Goto, Bolton Oleg, Uemura, Yota Tsuji, David Finlay, Evil, Sanada, Hiroshi Tanahashi, and 2 play-in winners, like wild cards that are going to be entered to this bracket. So yes, it looks like we will get Evil versus Sanada once again this summer.
Yeah,
can't wait. And Block B, El Phantasmo, Shota Umino, Shingo Takagi, Zack Sabre Jr., Great Khan, Gabe Kidd, Ren Narada, Konosuke Takeshita for the 2nd year in a row, and again 2 wild cards. I'd say looking at that, Block B to me probably looks like more interesting. Like I like El Phantasmo's, Shingo, Zach, Gabe, Takeshita. Like I think there's bigger matches in there. Do you have any thoughts of who the other 2 members for each block could potentially be?
I think it's interesting that of all the competitors that were announced today, they all, and I mean, Takeshita included, because he has this kind of three-way arrangement with New Japan and DDT and AEW. We don't seem to have any outsiders yet. No, there are going to be these 4 play-in matches, and the dates and venues have been announced.
June 23rd at Korakuen Hall and Independence Day, July 4th at Tokyo Budokan.
At Budokan, yeah. So we know when they're happening and where they're happening, but we don't know who's going to be in them. So I do wonder if we might get some AEW talent going over for those play-in matches, because everyone listed so far seems to be a contracted New Japan talent, and it's not particularly exciting so far. I do agree with you that the B block looks more interesting. I think Oleg Bolton is coming along nicely. He's in the A block, but what I saw of him today, he has a bit of aura about him. He's improving all the time. I'm interested to see him. But a lot of it is what we're going to see, is what we saw last year. Now, of course, last year we did not have Hiroshi Tanahashi, and we do this year. And I think that's one of the major points here, is that
ambitious, right?
This guy,
is his last tournament?
Yeah, I guess they felt he's retiring in January. It's his last chance to be in a G1, but we know how grueling this months-long tournament is, and how hit and miss Tanahashi is in ring at the moment. I think this is a really big ask.
It is, but we all know he's broken down at this point. But can you see New Japan just the biggest match possible is probably still him in the main event of Wrestle Kingdom? No, like if you're trying to sell those tickets, I think people will look past the limitations on Tanahashi's final night going for the title one last time. Like, could you see that being a possibility? Like, I wouldn't really put it past them, despite his limitations.
I wouldn't rule it out. I feel that it's very ambitious. I think it's even ambitious for Tanahashi to get through this tournament without injury. So how you book him to win it? Yes, it's possible, but I think it's risky and it's tricky, because he is broken down. There is an injury risk there in putting him in this tournament. Of course, they can flip all of that. They can change it, and they can give us a really satisfying retirement match in January anyway, regardless of all of that. But yeah, I wouldn't rule it out as being in their plans. I think it's tricky to book.
He should just win it and retire the title and bring back the old IWGP championship and be like, I'm retiring this. I'm leaving as the real Butterfly New Japan champion, and just bring back the old IWGP.
I feel the biggest babyface move he could make at Wrestle Kingdom is probably to make it some sort of way of getting rid of this world heavyweight title and just go back to the traditional IWGP.
Obviously, like the problems with New Japan go beyond the look of a title, but really it has been since they changed the lineage of that title and changed that title that it's gone downhill for me. So it would be a nice move. Thinking of AEW talent who could potentially fill out these last 4 spots, who do you potentially see? I mean, you mentioned him earlier. Like, I could see a Josh Alexander fitting into this pretty nicely.
Yeah.
He's someone who wouldn't really be missed from AEW TV, but is a hell of a talent. You also have the Don Callis family connection. If you wanted to do some shenanigans with him and Takeshita during the tournament, tell a little story that way. But he would be my pick.
That's a good choice. I think we all know the AEW roster is enormous, and one of the reasons for, I suppose, someone like Josh Alexander not getting a great identity so far is the limited amount of TV time that you can give to build a character. So he's a definite candidate. And yeah, it has to be someone they can feel they can do with for around a month of this tournament. And in the summer, yeah, I don't know. I didn't give it a great deal of thought pre-show, and I think I would almost need to reach for my list of the AEW roster to kind of pick out some names.
Yeah, let's see if I'm having a look down here. Who could go? Send Roddy or Kyle. They're not doing much. Helico's still signed. I didn't know that. Actually, he was on TV the other week, wasn't he? Yeah, I think Josh Alexander, Roderick Strong. Let's send those two. Whether Brody King, whether they'd want to send him. Has he done a G1? Was he last year's G1? No, Continental Classic. Yeah, I could see him potentially, but yeah.
Anthony Ogogo. I'm looking through the days. Sure. I'm still at A, and they go by first name first.
Yeah, their roster's enormous. It's ridiculous.
It is absolutely enormous. But there's some really good workers there. And I think that's the sort of what you might be looking at. Maybe post-Death Riders, Claudio.
Yeah, I could see that as well. All right.
Would be a good use of him too, because he needs a refresh, as we've talked about before.
I feel Claudio always needs a refresh.
I know you're not the biggest fan.
I used to be. I think, there's only so many chances, I think. He's a good wrestler, but I think he's kind of at the position he should be, if that makes sense.
It does.
Oh, well. I think that brings us to an end, unless you have any other wild stories or thoughts about the wrestling world from this past week.
No, I can't believe we've gone over the 2-hour mark, Davie, on a weekend without a PLE or a pay-per-view. So, yeah, good going.
Yeah, I guess so. We do have a Triple Mania show tonight that might try and catch a little bit before Tuesday, or probably just catch the memes and the GIFs to talk about on Tuesday's show.
That's going to be a tricky one for me to catch because I've got an early start on a Monday. So yeah, that's nice. It's also not that easy to see. I think you need access to Max and a VPN to make Max think that you're in.
In Mexico. It was bizarre because WWE promoted this show with no way of weren't promoting how to watch this show at all. I'd have thought they'd have tried to set up something for international viewers, whether it just be like YouTube, like Worlds Collide, or some sort of way to subscribe to it. But
I feel like if Alberto's on the card, they feel like they don't want to say too much about Triple H.
Maybe. Well, that brings us to an end. Neal, thank you so much for filling in this week. It's always a pleasure talking to you about wrestling and your thoughts about everything going on. As you mentioned earlier, you can check out his reports on postwrestling.com, who I'm sure you're all aware of. And where else can we find you?
Well, you can look for me on Blue Sky at Neal Flanagan, or however it's formatted. I do still keep my Twitter account for keeping up with news, but I don't use it. So
I made the mistake of engaging with people this week, and so that was fun.
Davie.
It's yes.
It's worse every time. I'm now being served up dirt, as in porn, which never happened to me before in the For You feed when I first sort of log into Twitter. So that was interesting because I haven't really engaged with anything. I don't think that would make the algorithm think that's what I want to see. I just feel like it's the platform is hell.
Yeah, my For You seems to think I'm really interested in seeing what far right political
there's
Americans want me to hear. It's a very strange place. But you can find me on Twitter and Instagram at Davie Portman, as well as at Poisonrana Pod, or you can find me on Blue Sky at davie.poisonrana.ca or at poisonrana.ca. Go to poisonrana.ca to find all our links to everything we've got going on, including the links to our Patreon. As we said, it's only $5 a month, and it's well worth it. Over 600 shows in our catalog spanning wrestling, movies, and the lot. So give us a go. I saw a few of you signing up this week, so really appreciate that. But there are ways you can support us for free as well. You can hit that subscribe button. If you are watching this on YouTube, please hit that subscribe button. We'd love to build up our followers on here. And also give us a good rating on whatever platform you use, whether it be Apple, Spotify. Rate our podcast. Give us a 5-star. Say what you like about us. And if you do want to support us in other ways and look fresh this summer, go to chop-tees.com, where we have plenty of t-shirts and other forms of merchandise you can buy and show your love for the Poisonrana crew. And if I see you at All In Texas wearing something with the frog on, we will have a shot together or something.
Free hugs, at the very least.
And Braden will pay for it. That brings us to an end. Happy Father's Day again to everyone. I hope you enjoyed the rest of your Sunday or your week, whenever you're listening to this. Thank you, Neal, once again. Take care.
Thank you for having me, Davie.
You are very welcome. Be safe and goodbye. Ahoy!
Poisonrana.
Thank you, Neal. That was great.